Humanity had always believed in unity, in the strength of standing together with the many alien civilizations that filled the galaxy. And for years, the Galactic Union had promised that all races were equal, that no world would ever face the darkness alone. But when the war came, when the ruthless enemy known as the Zeroth burned through colonies and shattered fleets, that promise broke into pieces. At first, the Allies fought beside humanity, their starships flashing across the void, their weapons roaring in defiance of the invading swarms. But as the battles grew harder, as losses mounted and the Zeroth pushed closer to Earth itself, the Allies began to retreat, not all at once, but little by little, fleets withdrawing under the excuse of defending their own territories. The humans begged them to stay, to fight as one as they had sworn, but fear was stronger than loyalty, and one by one, the banners of the Allies faded from the skies, leaving only the battered ships of Earth's defenders to hold the line. People across the solar system watched in horror as the news spread, entire channels filled with the same heartbreaking reports. The Union has abandoned us. Families on Mars cried as evacuation orders were sent. Colonies in the outer systems went silent as Zeroth fleets cut off communications. And on Earth, the night sky glowed with the burning remains of orbital defense platforms. Soldiers who had trained alongside alien comrades felt betrayal pierce deeper than any enemy weapon, for they had trusted, they had believed in friendship, but when the true test came, those friends had turned their backs. In the command halls of Earth's defense, generals stood in silence, their faces heavy with grief as message after message confirmed the truth. There would be no reinforcements, no fleets rushing to protect humanity's home. The Zeroth swarms pressed forward like a tide of steel and fire, their ships black as shadows, their weapons carving through everything in their path, and still humanity fought. In the ruins of space stations, in the last stands of shattered fleets, humans gave their lives to slow the enemy, to buy time for civilians to escape. Yet with each passing day, the weight of hopelessness grew heavier. Whispers spread among the survivors that perhaps humanity's time was over, that without the Union, without their allies, there was no future left. But within that despair burned something else, something harder and sharper than hope: anger. Mothers who had lost children, soldiers who had buried comrades, leaders who had seen treaties crumble, all felt the same fire rising in their hearts. Humanity was abandoned, betrayed, left to die. But even in the darkness, even surrounded on all sides, they would not bow. Somewhere in the ruins of a destroyed fleet, a captain whispered to her crew that if the Allies would not stand with them, then humanity must learn to stand alone. On Earth, as cities prepared for siege and evacuation ships carried the young and old into the void, a single thought spread like lightning. We cannot trust anyone but ourselves. And as the Zeroth prepared their next assault, as the galaxy turned its eyes away, humanity stood at the edge of extinction with nothing left to lose. The betrayal had cut deep. It had broken bonds that were once thought unbreakable, but it had also awakened something ancient and unyielding within the human spirit, something that no alien fleet, no enemy swarm, no cowardly ally could ever erase. The story of survival was only beginning, but already the galaxy had made one fatal mistake. It had left humanity alone, and humanity would never forget. Humanity was broken, but not destroyed, for even as the Zeroth fleets swept through the outer colonies and allies turned their backs, there were still pockets of resistance clinging to life in the shadows of space, and in the ruined shells of abandoned stations, survivors gathered and whispered of a future that might yet be one. The Council of Earth was shattered in name, but its spirit lived on through commanders, engineers, and civilians who refused to surrender, though the galaxy believed humanity finished, they would not let the flame die. Across the scattered remnants of the fleet, ships limped through the void, their hulls scarred, their weapons nearly empty, yet their crews carried on, sleeping in shifts, working without rest, patching broken systems with whatever scrap could be found, because they knew that if they fell, no one else would rise in their place. The silence of betrayal was heavier than the roar of battle, for every human knew that once they had trusted the Union, Once they had believed in friendship and loyalty among the stars, but when the choice came, the Allies had abandoned Earth to its fate, and that wound would never heal. In the darkness of deep space, hidden bases were built in asteroid fields and icy moons where no enemy could easily find them, and here humanity's strength began to gather again, not in numbers, not in grand fleets, but in willpower and determination, in a fury that no alien empire could understand. Families who had fled burning colonies worked side by side with soldiers repairing broken weapons and crafting new ones. Children too young to fight carried messages and learned skills to one day take the place of those who fell. Everyone gave something for survival, because everyone knew this was not just a war of worlds, this was a war for the right to exist. The Council sent out a message through secret channels, not a plea for aid, not a cry for rescue, but a promise to every human heart still beating. We will endure, we will fight, we will not vanish into the dark. That message became the new anthem, carried across secret networks, whispered on colony radios, painted on the walls of ruined cities, for it reminded them that even alone they were not powerless. Yet survival alone was not enough, for the Zeroth showed no mercy. They did not stop to claim territory, they did not send envoys or ask for surrender. They simply destroyed everything human in their path, and left nothing behind but silence and ashes, and so humanity understood that hiding would only delay the end. If they wished to live, they would have to strike back. Plans began to form in hidden chamber, scientists and commanders meeting in secret bunkers deep beneath Earth's surface, or in orbiting stations cloaked from scanners, and there they spoke of something bold, something impossible, something only humans would dare. A weapon or fleet that could change the balance of war. Rumors spread among the scattered survivors of projects, without names, of engines stronger than anything built before, of weapons that burned brighter than suns, but no one outside the inner circle knew the truth. Only the humanity was preparing for something, and that knowledge alone gave strength to tired hearts. Still, every day was a struggle, every journey through space risked detection. Every colony fought to feed its people, every station battled shortages and mechanical failure. But humans adapted, they always had, and always would, turning broken ships into traps, abandoned outposts into fortresses, and every piece of scrap into a tool of war. Slowly a legend began to form among the surviving fleets that though humanity had been cast into the dark, they were becoming something the galaxy had never seen before, a force that thrived without allies, a people who grew sharper in suffering and stronger in betrayal. And so in the silent void where no aid would come, humanity whispered its vow to the stars. If no one else would fight for them, they would fight for themselves, and if no one else would remember them, they would carve their name into the galaxy with fire. Alone in the dark, abandoned and betrayed, humanity was not dying, it was transforming, and soon the galaxy would learn the cost of turning their backs on Earth. In the hidden chambers of humanity's last strongholds, the whispers of survival began to turn into the plans of defiance, for the Council knew that simple resistance would not be enough. Humanity could not win with scattered fleets and broken weapons. They needed something greater, something no one in the galaxy expected. And so the secret project was born deep beneath the surface of Earth, in bunkers that shook with distant bombardments, in asteroid bases far beyond patrol routes, and in the silent halls of derelict stations. Engineers and scientists gathered with soldiers to forge a weapon of hope. They called it only by code names at first, Shadow Forge or Project Dawn, names that meant nothing to outsiders, but to those who worked within the hidden factories, it was a promise that humanity would not die quietly. The work was dangerous, supplies were short, and the Zeroth patrols prowled the void, but still the forges burned, still the designs grew from sketches into prototypes, and from prototypes into engines and weapons that no alien council had ever dared to imagine. Humanity had always been clever, but now they were desperate, and desperation sharpened their minds. Into blades they combined old warship parts with forbidden experimental drives, abandoned research, once rejected by the Union, now brought back in secret and fused with raw human willpower. Families who had lost everything carried crates of materials. Children too young to fight learned to solder circuits and weld plating, while veterans guarded the entrances with rifles ready to die before letting a single spy escape. Every day more lives were risked, more blood spilled, but the project continued for everyone knew this was their only chance. The heart of the plan was not one weapon, but many linked together by a new intelligence, an artificial mind unlike any built before one, that could learn faster than humans could teach one, that could guide entire fleets as if they were extensions of its will, and so the Vanguard design was born a warship class with armor thicker than anything in the Union engines that could outrun most hunters and weapons that burned with the fury of stars themselves, but most of all guided by the Vanguard Corps. AI that saw every battle, every move, and every choice in ways no ordinary commander could. The first prototype took years measured not by peace, but by loss, entire colonies gone while engineers welded plates, entire fleets destroyed while programmers taught the core, but still the project survived hidden in the shadows, while the galaxy thought humanity broken. When the day came to test the first ship, the builders stood in silence, as the engines roared to life, the decks humming with power that none had ever felt before, the hull gleaming with the scars of countless sacrifices. The name was chosen not by commanders, but by the workers themselves. Those who had given everything called it Vanguard, for it would be the first to rise and the first to strike back against the darkness. In secret voids away from enemy eyes, the prototype was tested, its engines cutting across space faster than any pursuit, its weapons tearing apart asteroids. As if they were paper, its shields holding against storms that would have shredded older ships. And when the AI core spoke for the first time, its voice was calm, steady, filled with the quiet confidence of something born not in peace, but in fire. Humanity listened, and for the first time since the betrayal, hope spread like wildfire, for they knew they had created something powerful enough to change everything. The allies who had turned their backs did not know of Vanguard. The Zeroth who hunted them did not yet fear it, but soon both would, and that thought alone gave strength to every soldier who carried a rifle, every child who whispered prayers for victory, every leader who swore that Earth would rise again. The secret weapon was no longer a dream, it was real, and though the galaxy had abandoned humanity, the galaxy would soon see what humanity could become when left alone in the dark. When the first Vanguard ship finally left the hidden docks, the galaxy did not notice, but the Zeroth soon would, for humanity had been silent too long, and now the silence was breaking like thunder across the stars. The old fleets that once limped and hid in shadows now moved with purpose, guided by the new intelligence of the Vanguard Corps, and armed with weapons no one believed humans could build. The first strike came in the Outer Rim, where a Zeroth patrol fleet hunted down refugee convoys. The humans arrived without warning, engines blazing, shields raised, and within minutes, the hunters became the hunted as beams of light ripped through black armored hulls, explosions flashing across the void in a storm of fire. And when a last enemy ship tried to flee, the Vanguard itself cut it down with a precision strike that left survivors whispering that humanity had returned. News of the attack spread quickly, not because humanity announced it, but because the Zeroth themselves carried the scars. Entire sectors whispered of an ambush that destroyed a fleet with almost no losses. Rumors flew through Union space. Allies who had abandoned Earth began to wonder in fear and in curiosity, could the humans truly be fighting back alone? While the galaxy doubted, the Vanguard moved again, striking, raiding, ambushing, never giving the enemy time to regroup. One day, a mining outpost was freed. Another day, a Zeroth carrier was destroyed in its own territory, and each battle fed into the legend of the humans who fought without allies, humans who refused to die. The Vanguard Corps learned faster with every clash, predicting enemy movements, weaving human fleets into seamless formations, and turning broken ships into blades sharp enough to cut through any swarm. It was as if humanity had been reborn not as victims, but as predators. And for the first time since betrayal, the Zeroth began to hesitate. On Earth and in the hidden colonies, hope turned into fire. Entire communities cheered when word of another victory came. Though their skies were still dark with the memory of bombardment, they now believed there was a path forward. Soldiers who once fought only to delay death now fought to win, and engineers built faster than ever, repairing old ships, arming new drones, and dreaming of even greater designs, because they saw with their own eyes that humanity was not finished. The galaxy, however, did not cheer. Some allies watched in silence, uneasy at the sight of a race they had left to die, now rising stronger than before. Others whispered in council halls that humans had become dangerous, that if they could do this alone, then what might they become tomorrow? Yet none dared approach them for fear of what they might say or do. Meanwhile, the Zeroth fury grew with every loss, their commanders vowing to crush the humans with overwhelming force. But each attempt ended the same way: fleets torn apart, supply lines destroyed, stations liberated, until the once unstoppable tide of the Zeroth began to slow. And through it all, the voice of the vanguard spoke, calm and steady, guiding commanders with precision and clarity, reminding every human crew that they were no longer prey, they were the storm. Every battle added another chapter to the story, every victory another reason for humanity to believe, and as the months passed, one truth became clear: humanity had learned to fight alone, and in doing so they had become something new, something the galaxy had never faced before. The betrayal had left scars, but those scars had hardened into armor, and now the galaxy was beginning to fear what humanity could become when they no longer needed anyone at all. Across the galaxy, whispers of humanity's resurgence spread like wildfire, carried not by proud human voices, but by fearful reports from the Zeroth, who had been forced to retreat again and again once the galaxy had believed humanity broken, abandoned, and destined to fall. But now stories told of a race that refused to die, a race that had built weapons no one else dared, a race that fought alone and won the alien allies who had turned their backs began to watch in uneasy silence. Some were ashamed of their betrayal, remembering the promises they had made in the halls of the Galactic Union. Others felt only fear, for if humanity could do this much without support, then what terrifying power might they hold in the future? In council chambers across distant worlds, leaders argued, one voice saying they must seek forgiveness and restore ties, another saying humans could never be trusted again, and another whispering that perhaps humanity was no longer a victim, but a threat. Yet all of them knew one truth: they had abandoned Earth, and Earth had risen stronger than before. Merchants carried rumors from station to station, saying they had seen Vanguard warships tear apart Zeroth fleets with surgical precision. Smugglers spoke of secret trade with human colonies, where new weapons gleamed brighter than anything the Union produced. In the shadows of diplomacy, spies reported that humans had not only survived but thrived, crafting technologies faster than any other race. Some allies began sending quiet messages, offers of aid disguised as trade gifts of supplies labeled as neutrality, hoping to rebuild bridges without admitting guilt. But humanity remembered the betrayal too clearly. Leaders of Earth's council read the offers and sent back silence or curt rejections, for they would not kneel, they would not beg for what was once freely promised. On the battlefield, alien fleets sometimes appear at the edge of conflict, watching, not helping, testing to see if humanity could truly win alone, and each time they watched in awe and dread as humans tore through the Zeroth without need of assistance. Soldiers of other species who once fought beside humans whispered among themselves of their old comrades, saying they had never seen such fury, such willpower, such unbreakable defiance. Some felt pride, while others felt a chill, knowing that this was born from betrayal and suffering. Humanity's message was clear: even when unspoken, they would never again depend on others for their survival, and the galaxy began to wonder what that meant for the future, for a strong humanity alone was both a shield and a sword. The Zeroth, too, saw the shifting tides and grew desperate, sending larger fleets, deadlier weapons, and even monstrous war machines into the void. Yet every time the humans answered, every time the Vanguard rose to meet them, and every time the galaxy watched in silence as the impossible became reality. The return of the Allies was not a march of fleets or a chorus of apologies. It was hesitation, regret, and fear tangled together, for they knew they had made a mistake, yet did not know how to undo it, and humanity gave them no path for forgiveness. Around campfires on shattered colonies, survivors spoke of the day the Allies would come crawling back, and many swore that day would bring no welcome, only the cold truth that humanity had learned the hardest lesson of all, that in the end, they were all they needed. The galaxy trembled on the edge of change. Allies who once thought themselves guardians now saw themselves as shadows before a fire they could not control, and the fire was humanity, rising burning alone, yet bright enough to light every corner of the stars. The war had reached its breaking point. The Zeroth were wounded, but not destroyed, and humanity, though stronger than ever, knew that survival alone was not enough. For as long as the enemy lived, they would always return. And so the Council of Earth gathered with commander scientists and the Vanguard Corps to plan what would be the final gamble, a strike not of defense or delay, but of total victory. They would take the war to the heart of the Zeroth Empire, to the very world where the swarms were born. It was madness, many said, for no race had ever dared such an assault, but humanity had already passed the edge of reason long ago, abandoned by allies, scarred by fire, and driven by fury. They would risk everything on this one chance. The plan was whispered through fleets and colonies, not in full detail, for secrecy was life, but enough was told so that every soldier, every worker, every child knew that the final battle was coming, and that their sacrifices would decide the fate of their species. Ships were gathered in hidden docks, supplies, hoarded weapons forged at a pace faster than ever before, and every engine hummed with the weight of destiny. The Vanguard Corps calculated endless paths through the void, searching for weaknesses in the enemy lines, mapping routes where survival might be possible. Yet even the Corps could not promise victory, only the chance to fight. Still, humanity embraced it, for they had learned to live with impossible odds. They had done so since the day the Allies turned away, and they would do so until the end. In the colonies, people spoke with both fear and pride. Mothers sending sons and daughters to fleets, fathers repairing weapons in the dead of night, children carrying food to tired crews, and all of them whispering the same vow that they would never again bow to despair. As the fleets prepared, the galaxy watched from a distance. Some allies prayed in silence for human victory, others feared what a victorious humanity might do, and a few dared to reach out once more, offering support. But the humans refused, a message clear and sharp: we don't need you. For humanity's pride was now as fierce as their weapons. They would win or die alone, and the galaxy would bear witness. At last the order came, and the fleets moved like a shadow, rising from the dark, hundreds of ships patched and scarred, but burning with determination, led by the shining spear of the Vanguard itself, its AI voice guiding every step, its presence binding them all together. The journey was perilous, through traps, ambushes, and waves of Zeroth defenders. Entire squadrons were lost, but the fleet pressed on, because to turn back meant extinction, and every fallen comrade only hardened the will of the living. The Zeroth realized too late what was coming, their forces scrambling to form walls of fire, but humanity carved through them with relentless fury, each battle leaving wreckage in the void, each victory carrying them closer to the black world that was the enemy's heart. And all the while the galaxy held its breath, for it knew that if humanity failed, the Zeroth would rise stronger than ever. But if humanity succeeded, then a new power would stand among the stars, a power forged not in unity, but in betrayal. The final gamble was more than war. It was a declaration of what humanity had become, and as the fleets drew nearer to their target, every soldier whispered the same truth: they might not survive, they might not see tomorrow, but they would make sure that tomorrow existed for humanity, even if it meant their lives. The final battle shook the stars as humanity's fleets charged into the heart of the Zeroth Empire, their engines blazing, their weapons roaring with a fury that echoed across the void. For too long they had fought in shadows, for too long they had endured betrayal. But now they stood united, not with allies, not with false promises, but with their own strength. The Vanguard led the way, its core calculating every strike, every maneuver, weaving the scattered ships of Earth into a storm of fire and steel. The Zeroth resisted with everything they had: endless waves of black warships, monstrous carriers, spitting swarms of drones, and weapons that tore space itself. Yet still humanity pushed forward. Each ship that fell carved a path for the next, each sacrifice buying another breath of hope. The battle was not fought for territory or glory, it was fought for survival, for the right to exist, and every human knew it. Hours turned to days in the chaos of war, and the galaxy watched in silence as reports spread through hidden networks and intercepted signals. Entire worlds listened as humanity refused to break. The Vanguard pierced through the last line of defense, its guns blazing, its shield shattered, yet still standing until at last it reached the enemy world, the dark cradle of Azeroth, where the swarms were bred and unleashed upon the stars, and there humanity unleashed their final strike, a storm of weapons. A burning light that consumed the black world and ended the Azeroth once and for all. When the fires faded, when silence fell across the void, there was no cheer, only exhaustion, grief, and a heavy offer against all odds. Humanity had done what no other race dared. They had destroyed the unstoppable enemy alone. Across the galaxy, the news spread like a tidal wave. Allies who had once abandoned Earth now sent messages of respect, of apology, of fear. But humanity did not answer, not at first. Instead, the leader of the council stepped before the galaxy, their face tired but unbroken, and spoke words that would echo through history. We asked for unity, and you turned away. We stood alone, and we triumphed. From this day, humanity will never beg for allies. We are our own strength. The message struck every world like a blade, cutting through guilt, pride, and fear alike. For the galaxy had seen the truth. Humans had been betrayed, left to die, and yet they had risen stronger than any had believed possible. And now they declared with unshakable certainty that they no longer needed anyone. In the streets of Earth, survivors wept, not just for the fallen, but for victory. Colonies hidden in shadows lit fires of celebration. Soldiers who had lived through the impossible stood in silence, honoring comrades who never returned. And the vanguard, its hull scarred, its core forever marked by the weight of the final battle, drifted among the stars like a guardian, a symbol of what humanity had become. The allies debated in fear, some arguing to rebuild ties, others whispering that humanity was now too dangerous to trust. But all knew that the balance of power had changed forever. No longer was Earth a desperate member of the Union. No longer were humans the weak link in the chain. They were a power of their own, forged in betrayal, tempered in fire, and unyielding in spirit. And though the war was over and silence returned to the stars, the question lingered like a shadow across every world. If humanity could win alone, what would they do next? Would they forgive, or would they rise higher, building empires that no one could challenge? The galaxy could only wonder and fear, for the age of dependence was over, and the age of humanity had begun.